The slide disappeared while I was mid-sentence. 1 second, my $7 million revenue projection glowed on the screen behind me. The next second, nothing but white light and Derek's voice cutting through the conference room like a blade. "We're pulling the plug on Aurora." No preamble. No discussion. Just 5 words that ended 2 years of my life. He didn't even look at me when he said it. His eyes stayed locked on the board members, and he wore this small, satisfied smile that made my stomach drop. "Effective immediately," he added like he was ordering lunch. My hands went numb around the presentation clicker. The room felt suddenly airless, like someone had sucked all the oxygen out through the vents. I remember thinking very clearly, did he just do that? In front of everyone. But I already knew the answer. He had. And from the way he leaned back in his chair, fingers steepled like some corporate villain from a bad movie, he'd enjoyed it. Nobody spoke. The silence stretched out, thick and uncomfortable, filling every corner of that glass-walled room. Not Marcus from finance, who'd approved my budget 3 months ago with a handshake and a promise. Not Vanessa from product, who'd called Aurora game-changing just last week. Not even the VP who'd personally signed off on the client contracts that were already generating revenue. Someone coughed. Someone else shifted their weight, chair squeaking against the floor. I stood there at the front of the room, heart slamming against my ribs, while Derek started talking about strategic focus and resource optimization. Empty words that meant nothing except that he was erasing 2 years of 80-hour weeks, cancelled vacations, and missed birthdays. He spoke smoothly, confidently, like this had all been decided long ago and I was the only one who hadn't gotten the memo. Maybe I was. Derek finally glanced at me. Not apologetic. Not uncomfortable. Not even slightly uncertain. He looked pleased with himself, like he'd just solved a complicated math problem and wanted credit for it. "Karen will be transitioning out of this initiative," he announced to the room. His tone casual, almost bored. Like I was office furniture being moved to storage. My face went hot. Blood rushed to my cheeks, and I felt every pair of eyes in that room either on me or deliberately avoiding me. I forced myself to nod once, a stiff little movement that probably looked as robotic as it felt. Inside something fractured. Not loudly, not dramatically, but like ice cracking under weight. A small, dangerous split that would keep spreading if I didn't get out of there soon. I needed to leave. Before anyone saw what was happening behind my eyes. The meeting ended around me, not with me. People gathered their laptops and coffee cups and filed out, moving in that awkward, hurried way people do when they've just witnessed something uncomfortable and want to pretend they haven't. I walked down the hallway in a kind of fog, my feet moving automatically while my brain struggled to catch up with what had just happened. One of the junior analysts, a kid named Tyler who'd helped me with data modeling, caught my eye as I passed. His expression said everything. "I'm sorry this happened. I'm scared I'm next." I reached my desk and lowered myself into the chair slowly, carefully, like sudden movement might cause me to shatter into pieces right there in the middle of the open floor plan. My computer monitor glowed with unread emails. Calendar notifications blinked at the corner of the screen. Everything looked exactly the same as it had an hour ago. Except everything had changed. My name is Karen Porter. Until 11 minutes ago, I was the director leading Aurora, the company's most promising growth initiative in 5 years. I'd built it from a rough concept sketched on a napkin into a fully operational program with actual revenue, actual clients, and actual market validation. Now, apparently I was excess weight. Redundant. Someone to be transitioned out, without warning or explanation. I stared at my keyboard, at the coffee ring on my desk, at the framed photo of my dog that I'd put up to make this place feel less sterile. None of it made sense. Aurora wasn't failing. The numbers were solid. Client feedback was overwhelmingly positive. We were ahead of schedule and under budget. So why kill it? Why kill it now? And why humiliate me in front of the entire leadership team to do it? Those questions circled my brain like vultures, but I didn't have answers. Not yet. 2 years earlier, I'd pitched Aurora with hands that wouldn't stop shaking and a whiteboard marker that kept running dry halfway through my diagrams. The conference room had been smaller then, less intimidating, but it had felt enormous. Derek had been there, along with 2 other executives whose names I can't even remember now. I'd practiced my pitch 17 times the night before. I knew every word, every data point, every answer to every potential objection. But standing there, marker squeaking across the board, my voice had cracked twice. Nobody believed in it at first. The idea was too new, too risky, too different from what the company usually did. Interesting, one executive had said, which is corporate speak for absolutely not. We'll circle back, another had offered, which means, don't hold your breath. But Derek had leaned forward, eyes sharp and focused. Tell me more, he'd said. And I had. For 45 minutes straight. After that meeting, Derek became Aurora's biggest champion. He praised me in leadership meetings, forwarding emails to executives with subject lines like, "This is the future," and "Karen's vision is exactly what we need." He copied me on messages calling the project transformational and visionary. In one-on-ones, he'd lean back in his chair and say things like, "This is your baby, Karen. You own this completely. I'm just here to clear obstacles for you." I'd believed him. God, I'd really believed him. I thought I'd finally found a leader who understood what I was trying to build, who saw the potential the way I did. I'd worked weekends, skipped vacations, canceled dinner plans and coffee dates and everything else that makes life bearable. 'Cause I thought we were building something together. That was my first mistake. Thinking we meant anything when it came to corporate America. Aurora wasn't just some side project I'd cooked up for fun. It was real. Revenue generating, client-backed, contract-anchored real. We had 3 major clients already signed, with 2 more in final negotiations. The revenue projections weren't fantasy numbers pulled from thin air. They were based on actual signed agreements with actual Fortune 500 companies. My compensation was tied to Aurora's success. My bonus structure, my promotion track, my entire professional future had been rebuilt around this initiative. Derek knew that. Hell, he'd helped structure it that way. Skin in the game, he'd called it, grinning like he was doing me a favor. When Aurora succeeds, you succeed. When you succeed, we all succeed. I'd signed the paperwork without hesitation, because why wouldn't I? The project was already showing promise. The clients were happy. The team was solid. Failure wasn't even on my radar. Success felt inevitable. Looking back now, I can see how naive that was. That night, I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop open and a glass of wine I couldn't bring myself to drink. The apartment was silent except for the hum of the refrigerator and the occasional car passing outside. I didn't cry. I wanted to maybe, but the tears wouldn't come. I just felt hollow, scraped out like someone had reached inside my chest and removed everything important, leaving only the shell of a person behind. I kept replaying the meeting in my head. Derek's smile. The white screen. His voice saying, effective immediately, like it was nothing. The way nobody had defended me. Not one person. I'd worked alongside these people for years. Collaborated. Celebrated wins together. And when it mattered, when I needed someone to say, wait, let's talk about this, they'd all just sat there. Silent. Complicit. I closed the laptop without checking email. What was the point? Aurora was dead. And apparently so was my career at this company. Around midnight, I opened the folder I hadn't looked at in months. It was labeled Aurora Contracts and Terms, buried 3 layers deep in my documents folder. Inside were all the legal agreements I'd signed when the project launched. Employment addendums, performance clauses, compensation structures, equity provisions. I hadn't reviewed them since signing because why would I? Everything had been going well. The project was succeeding. My relationship with Derek seemed solid. But now, sitting in my dark kitchen with only the laptop screen for light, I started reading. Not because I was planning anything. Not because I had some grand strategy forming. I just needed to understand what had happened. I needed something to make sense when nothing else did. I scrolled through page after page of dense legal language, my eyes glazing over at terms like fiduciary responsibility, and material breach, and binding arbitration. Most of it was standard corporate boilerplate. And then I saw it. Section 14, subsection C. One sentence, buried in the middle of a paragraph about termination procedures. Termination of revenue-generating initiatives without documented cause triggers mandatory binding arbitration under the terms outlined in Appendix G. I read it once, then again, then a third time more slowly, making sure I wasn't misunderstanding. My heart started beating faster. Not with anger or grief anymore. With something else. Something sharper. The contract was clear. Crystal clear. If Derek killed Aurora without a legitimate, documented business reason, I could force arbitration. Not a lawsuit, which would take years and cost a fortune. Arbitration. Faster, cheaper, and far harder for the company to drag out or bury. I sat back in my chair, hands finally steady for the first time in hours. Not because I was happy, not because I felt vindicated, but because now I knew something Derek didn't. He'd made a mistake. Big one. And I was going to make him pay for it. I called a lawyer the next morning. Not a friend of a friend type lawyer or someone I found through Google. A real employment attorney named Patricia Reeves, whose office was downtown in one of those buildings with marble floors and wood-paneled walls. She took my call personally, which surprised me, and listened without interrupting while I explained what had happened. When I finished, there was a long pause. He terminated the project, she said slowly, in front of the leadership team with no documentation, no warning, and no stated cause? Yes. Another pause, longer this time. Then she exhaled, and I could hear the smile in her voice. Ms. Porter, that was the most expensive sentence your boss has ever spoken. We scheduled an in-person meeting for the next day. When I hung up, I felt something I hadn't felt in 24 hours. Control. Not over the situation, not yet, but over myself. Over my response. Derek had taken Aurora from me. But he hadn't taken everything. I didn't confront Derek. I didn't send angry emails or make veiled threats in Slack messages or schedule a meeting to discuss my concerns. I did nothing. Radio silence. At work I was calm, professional, even pleasant when people asked how I was doing. I'm fine, I'd say with a small smile. Just figuring out next steps. People seemed relieved by that answer. It let them off the hook. If I wasn't upset, they didn't have to feel bad about not defending me. Derek probably thought I'd given up. Accepted my fate. Moved on like a good little employee who knows when she's beaten. He had no idea what was coming. Because while I stayed quiet at work, Patricia was busy behind the scenes. Filing paperwork. Gathering evidence. Building a case so airtight that Derek wouldn't be able to squirm his way out of it no matter how many lawyers the company threw at the problem. The arbitration notice went out on a Tuesday morning at exactly 8:03. I wasn't there when Derek opened it, but I imagine the scene clearly. Him in his office, probably in that black leather chair he was so proud of, sipping his overpriced coffee from the French press he kept on the credenza, opening his email, seeing the subject line. Notice of binding arbitration. Porter versus company. Maybe he frowned. Maybe he called legal immediately. Maybe he tried to laugh it off, telling himself it was nothing, just a disgruntled employee making noise that would go away on its own. But it wouldn't go away. That was the beautiful part. The contract he'd signed, the very same contract he'd pushed me to agree to because it aligned incentives, had teeth. Real sharp, legally binding teeth. And now those teeth were closing around his ankle. By noon, I'd heard through the grapevine that legal was involved. By end of day, I heard Derek had been pulled into a closed-door meeting with the general counsel. I went home that night and slept better than I had in weeks. Derek started telling people it was routine, just a formality, a misunderstanding that would be cleared up quickly. You know how it is, he apparently said in a leadership meeting I wasn't invited to. Employees get upset. They file complaints. It doesn't mean anything. But I noticed things changing. He stopped taking coffee breaks in the common area where he might run into me. His assistant started screening his calls more carefully. In meetings where we both happened to be present, he avoided eye contact entirely, focusing on his laptop or the person next to him. Other people noticed too. Whispers started. Speculation. Did you hear Karen's suing Derek? I heard she's got a real case. I heard legal is freaking out. I didn't correct anyone. I didn't confirm or deny anything. I let the rumors swirl and grow and take on lives of their own. Because the truth was even better than the rumors. And the truth would come out soon enough. Discovery was a beautiful thing. In arbitration, both sides have to turn over relevant documents, emails, meeting notes, performance reviews. Anything that might shed light on the decision to terminate Aurora. I watched it happen through Patricia, who'd update me every few days with new findings. They sent over Derek's emails from the last 6 months, she told me during one call. There's some interesting stuff in here. Interesting turned out to be an understatement. Derek had sent dozens of emails about Aurora. Messages to executives praising the project. Forecasts showing Aurora exceeding targets. Client feedback that was glowing. And nowhere, not in a single email, memo or document, was there any indication that Aurora was underperforming or needed to be shut down. The paper trail painted a clear picture. Aurora was succeeding. And Derek had killed it anyway. Without cause. Without documentation. Exactly the scenario the contract was designed to prevent. The room was getting smaller for Derek. I could feel it happening even from a distance. The first settlement offer came 6 weeks after I filed. I was in Patricia's office when she opened the email from the company's legal team. She read it silently, her expression neutral, then turned her laptop so I could see the screen. The number was significant. Not life-changing but enough to make me pause. Enough to make most people say, yes, let's end this now before it gets messy. Patricia watched me carefully. What do you want to do? She asked. I read the offer again. Then I thought about Derek's smile when he killed Aurora. The way he'd humiliated me in front of everyone. The way nobody had said a word in my defense. I thought about 2 years of nights and weekends and missed moments with people I loved. Decline, I said. Patricia nodded slowly, a small smile tugging at the corner of her mouth. Good, she said. Because they wouldn't be offering money this fast if they weren't scared. And if they're scared now, they'll be terrified later. She was right. The board got involved shortly after we declined the first offer. I know because Patricia received a call from a different lawyer. Not the company's regular counsel, but someone from an expensive outside firm. The kind of firm that charges $1,000 an hour and only gets called when things are serious. They want to settle, the new lawyer told Patricia. Quickly and quietly. But settling quickly wasn't in my interest anymore. This had stopped being about money somewhere along the way. Now it was about accountability. About making sure Derek couldn't do this to the next person, or the person after that. Because men like Derek don't learn unless they face consequences. Real consequences. Not a slap on the wrist or a strongly worded memo from HR. Consequences that hurt. That leave marks. Questions started being asked inside the company. Questions Derek apparently couldn't answer cleanly. Why was Aurora terminated? What was the documented business justification? Who approved the decision? When would the arbitration end? I stayed quiet through all of it, watching from a distance as Derek's carefully constructed world began to crack. The second settlement offer came 8 weeks in. Bigger number. More urgency in the tone of the email. Less confidence in their legal position. Patricia laid it out for me in her office, walking through what accepting would mean versus pushing forward. If we settle now, she said, you walk away with a significant sum. Enough to be comfortable while you find your next role. But if we go to arbitration and win, the award could be larger. Plus, there's the satisfaction of having your story heard officially on the record. She wasn't pushing me either way. Just presenting options. I sat there for a long moment weighing it. The money was tempting. God knows I could use it. My savings were dwindling. Job searching was exhausting. But every time I thought about accepting, I remembered Derek's face. That satisfied smile. The casual cruelty of, effective immediately. Decline, I said again. Patricia didn't look surprised. Then we prepare for the hearing, she said. And we prepare to win. For the first time in months, I felt something that almost resembled excitement. Arbitration day was quieter than I expected. No dramatic courtroom with wooden benches and a jury box. Just a conference room in a downtown office building, with a long table and uncomfortable chairs and 2 bright fluorescent lights. Derek sat on one side with 3 lawyers. I sat on the other with Patricia. The arbitrator, a woman in her 60s with silver hair and reading glasses on a chain, sat at the head of the table looking thoroughly unimpressed with everyone. There were no opening statements, no passionate speeches, no television-style dramatics. Just facts. Documents presented calmly. Emails read aloud. Contract language analyzed. Patricia walked through the timeline methodically, showing how Aurora had been performing well, meeting targets, generating revenue, right up until the moment Derek killed it without explanation. Derek's lawyers tried to argue strategic realignment, resource constraints, shifting priorities, but they had no documents to back it up. No emails, no memos, no board meeting minutes, just words, empty words hanging in the air like smoke. The hearing lasted 6 hours. By the end I was exhausted. Not from stress or anxiety, but from the sheer concentration required to follow every argument, every objection, every point and counterpoint. When it finally ended, the arbitrator closed her notebook and told us a decision would come within 30 days. We filed out silently. Derek didn't look at me. Not once during the entire hearing. His lawyers were already talking in low, urgent voices as they walked toward the elevators. Patricia and I went to a coffee shop across the street. How do you think it went? He asked. She considered the question while stirring sugar into her espresso. I think, she said carefully, that Derek's lawyers spent 6 hours trying to explain something they couldn't explain. And the arbitrator noticed. That night, I went home and slept better than I had in months. Not because I knew I'd won. Because I knew I'd fought. And fighting felt better than accepting. The ruling didn't come in 30 days. It came in 32, on a Tuesday morning while I was in the middle of a phone interview for a new position at a different company. My phone buzzed with an email from Patricia. Subject line. Decision. I excused myself from the interview, apologizing profusely, and stepped into my hallway. My hand shook as I opened the email. The decision was 42 pages long. Legal language, case citations, analysis of contract terms. I skipped to the end, heart pounding. Having reviewed all evidence and testimony, this arbitrator finds in favor of Karen Porter. The termination of Aurora was conducted without documented cause in violation of employment terms. Damages are awarded in the full amount requested, including lost compensation, bonus forfeiture, and reputational harm. Award total: $473,000. I read it 3 times. Then I sat down on my hallway floor and started laughing. Not hysterical laughter. Just this weird, relieved, exhausted sound that kept bubbling up from somewhere deep in my chest. Good one. Actually, legitimately won. Derek was asked to step away from the company 6 weeks after the arbitration decision. There was no announcement, no company-wide email, no farewell party or gold watch or LinkedIn post thanking everyone for the journey. He was just gone one day. His office cleaned out. His name removed from the leadership page on the company website. His calendar invites cancelled. The same way he'd erased me, the company erased him. Quickly, quietly, like he'd never been there at all. I heard about it through Marcus, who sent me a short text. Derek's out. Board forced him. Thought you'd want to know. I stared at that message for a long time, waiting to feel something. Satisfaction, maybe. Vindication. Victory. But mostly I just felt tired. Tired and ready to move forward. Tired of being angry. Tired of thinking about Derek and Aurora and everything that had happened. I wanted to close this chapter and start a new one. Somewhere else. Somewhere better. The new job offer came from a competitor. Bigger company. Better title. Significant raise. And most importantly, people who'd heard about Aurora and wanted to know if I'd be interested in building something similar for them. We followed your arbitration case, the hiring manager told me during our final interview. Not in a creepy way. Just through industry contacts. What you built was impressive. What you did afterward was even more impressive. We want someone with that kind of spine on our team. I accepted the offer that afternoon. When I gave notice at my old company, HR processed my resignation within 2 hours. No exit interview. No request to stay. Just a form letter thanking me for my service and wishing me well. I packed my desk in under 20 minutes. Said goodbye to exactly 3 people who'd been decent to me throughout everything. And walked out the front door for the last time, carrying a small box of personal items and feeling lighter than I had in years. I've been at the new company for 8 months now. Better pay. Real authority. Actual respect from leadership. I'm building something similar to Aurora, except this time nobody can take it away from me. It's written into my contract, ironclad and specific, because Patricia helped me negotiate it. Derek hasn't reached out. I doubt he ever will. I don't look him up online or wonder what he's doing now. He's irrelevant. The past. Someone who tried to break me and failed. The arbitration money is sitting in my investment account, growing slowly but steadily. I could have used it for something flashy. Car. Vacation. A down payment on a bigger place. But instead I put it away. Because the most valuable thing I got from that money wasn't financial security. It was proof. Proof that I'd been right. Proof that standing up had been worth it. Proof that my worth wasn't determined by Derek or any boss like him. The most satisfying revenge wasn't winning the case or getting the money or watching him lose his job. It was walking away knowing what I was capable of, and never needing his permission again.